Okay, hello everyone. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from, wherever part of the world. My name is Debbie, and I will be your host for today. And I am very excited to have you all here joining us. It's going to be an exciting discussion, an exciting hour. What are we doing here? We will be diving into some big B2B marketing questions. As you saw, is your B2B strategy effective, or is it ready for 2025? That is the answer that we want. That is the question that we want to answer today. As I mentioned, we have a fantastic discussion waiting for you. What we would love to do here at Brew Digital is to really make sure that we give you effective strategies to make you stand out at the end of the conversation. So with that said, I would not do a very good job introducing them, so I will let them introduce themselves. We have panelists who have joined us from different parts of the businesses. So I'll start off with Sarah, as you are on my screen. And Sarah, hi. Can you introduce yourself quite quickly for everyone?
Of course. So I'm Sarah McCoy. I am the Senior Brand Manager at the Adaptivist Group. So I ensure that all our associated brands put their best foot forward with clear messaging, positive sentiment across all of our stakeholders. I have over a decade building relationships between businesses and their customers, focusing on content and storytelling.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Glad to have you here. And I'm so sure that we have a lot of questions for you, and a lot of our audiences here today have a lot of questions for you, especially for that part that you mentioned about storytelling, because today we will talk about brand building. Now, I would like to call on my manager, actually, Rich Harper. Rich, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, hello, everyone. So I'm Rich Harper. I'm the head of digital marketing at Brew Digital. Brew Digital are a full-service digital agency. There's a lot of digitals to get in there. So my team that I head up have a global presence. We have expertise in SEO, paid media, email and CRM, and social media. My background, I've been in the agency industry for the past 16 years. Been at Brew now for coming up to 3 years, but prior to that, ran my own digital agency. Predominantly focused on digital marketing for the best part of 20 years in my career now.
Wow. Okay. So as you said there, Rich, strategy, I think that's definitely a core of the discussion that we're going to have. So we have a lot of questions waiting for you and grill you on what is the right strategy for us nowadays. Katie, I'm so happy to see you here. Welcome to our webinar. Please do introduce yourself for everyone.
Thank you. It's good to be here. So my name is Katie Gray. I've spent the last sort of 10 years in B2B marketing, starting my career in everything from events and then to field to digital and ABM. And then most recently in my role now, which is kind of bringing that all together in an integrated marketing role. So I'm currently the Senior Integrated Marketing Manager at Iterable. For those of you that might not be familiar with Iterable, it's a SaaS MarTech platform. So brands like Nando's, Strava, Calm use it to power out their communications to their customers. It's an interesting meta job. I'm similar to some people on this call and in this audience as well. I imagine it's like marketing technology to marketers, and so it's like an interesting inception kind of vibe. But yeah, my sort of specialism and where I try and focus is obviously launching campaigns, but making sure there's a good perfect blend of the kind of data digital side of things, as well as kind of the brand and creative side of things. So finding that perfect balance.
Amazing. And I think, Katie, that is definitely, you mentioned there the blend of data. And actually, that's one point that we touched on our first webinar. So I think it's good to touch back again on how some marketers sometimes miss out on that perfect, not looking only on the data, but also how to look at different channels in marketing. So that's amazing. And thank you all to all our panelists for being here and taking the time. I think it would be fair to also our panelists to get to know who our audiences are. So if you are joining us, please do use the chat button right there to introduce yourself, which industry you are in, what you hope to come out of here, so that our panelists would know what type of insights they want to share with you. And maybe you have also insights to share with us. So that's a very interesting thing. So a little bit of house rules before we get started. As I mentioned, the chat button here for Zoom is not for us to just stare at. Let's use it. So if you have any points you want to share, go at it. The Q&A box there with a question mark. Oh, Ryan Spilkin. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan said, chat is disabled. Good thing here is that I have my colleagues, Tom and Hayden, at the backstage, helping us with tech. So guys, if you can just get that chat on, not disabled. Thank you, Ryan, for that. But as Ryan has used the question box, that's how the good way to use it, which is let us know any questions that you have throughout the conversation, and we will be fielding in questions as we go. So yeah, and as I mentioned, we are at 2025, lots of things happening around the world, including marketing. And it's going to be a big year for us. If you look at the trends, the insights, AI, of course, how can we run away from AI? It's everywhere. There's just a lot of us for us to take in. So with that said, I would love to start jumping in. Thank you, Patrick, for saying that the chat button is working. So as I mentioned, please do share with us which industry you're joining us from, what insights you want to take away from this webinar, and we'll get through it. I'm going to open this first question to everyone. So everyone, jump in as you go. Let's start with the foundations of marketing. When you're building a B2B marketing strategy, what are the key elements that you find makes it effective?
I'm happy to go first. So I think it's probably quite a boring answer to start with, but there's like 4 things that I think to kind of focus on. I think the first thing, and arguably the most important, is like doing a retro, like making sure that you're doing a zoom out back on your strategy. Like every plan should come with a retro, so that you can look back at last year, like what worked, what didn't, what are the shortfalls, what you need to do to actually plan in the future to kind of tweak some of the things that maybe didn't work and didn't work. So like, where was your traffic coming from? Like, did you have like a healthy looking funnel? Was it leaky? Like, what were the conversion rates and that kind of thing? And then I think once you've got that, you can start to have a think about like the numbers, which obviously comes onto goals, which I think is, again, a super obvious thing when you're like looking at your planning. But typically in companies that I've worked for, they've just given us the goal, and then from that I work with my team to essentially reverse engineer it. So I know that if I've got this as like a pipeline, an opportunity goal, what do I actually need to be able to create that based on like a lead to an MQL to like a demo book or something. So having that kind of reverse engineered, and then once you've kind of got those numbers set up, you can then start thinking about, okay, like what are your big bets? So what are you going to do that's going to help you achieve those numbers? I think like often in marketing, we can get a little bit like, and I'm guilty of this as well. I get excited about something new or like a new experiment or something like that. So I can think like it can make me want to go off track. But I think having big bets set of like at the beginning of the year can really help you and your team prioritize and make sure that everyone's kind of tooting the same horn. I'm not very good at sayings, but I think that's how it goes. And I guess like then my final piece to that is, once you've got your big bets, like making sure they're not planned in a vacuum. So making sure that if you've got big bets for your marketing team, that also needs to align with like the rest of your go-to-market team. So you need to be making sure that that aligns with like your sales team and your CS team. So like what I mean by that is, say, for example, if your sales team have the idea that they want to go after enterprise accounts, but the marketing team are very focused on like industry specific content like retail, then there's like a misalignment with those big bets there, which means that the impact of your campaigns and the impact of your messaging is probably not going to be as good as it can be if you have that kind of team alignment. So yeah, I think it's like important to just be mindful about doing a retro with planning, having checkpoints throughout the year, and just being okay with being agile. Obviously everything changes. I'm sure marketers hate planning like a full year, because we know half of it was going to end up changing anyway, but it's good to have like the key pillars, I think.
Okay, awesome. Sarah or Rich, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add on to what Katie was saying. I really think it's about staying abreast of your customers and their pain points. So their pain points are forever changing, and it's really important that you understand not just the pain point, but their end goal. So what is it they're trying to achieve? Because actually, their frustration and what they think they need isn't always the right thing, and actually being able to be the translator for them between their frustration or their barrier to reaching a goal and what they think they need and what they actually need. That's where I feel like the true marketing magic happens. So, and also remembering that B2B marketing is actually in many ways B2C marketing. You're always dealing with a person. It's just a different budget. I always think of B2B as spending that's not yours. So it's understanding about how your brand then can speak to their emotional needs, not just their literal needs. Because often competitors will have very similar solutions or products to what you have. So what is the magic? What is the additional thing that you can add to that? And how do you build that into your B2B strategy, whether that is through content or through events? And just making sure that ultimately people keep you front and center because you make them feel like you know what you're doing. You make them feel as though you are the solution to that pain point.
Awesome.
I'll add to what Katie and Sarah said, and agree with everything that has been mentioned. But I think a good strategy, we really need to think about the fundamentals. And in marketing, what we do very well, or what I see with the customers I work with, is they jump straight to that kind of endpoint of promotion. It's like, how do we get this in front of people really quickly? And they forget everything else. And sometimes a lot of what we do is based on assumptions, and things like, you know, exactly what Sarah was saying, that audience research, knowing who they are, knowing where they are, where they are online or offline, where their attention is. It's not always the obvious places that everyone always turns to. And I think it's really knowing that audience. The amount of times I kind of speak to people and you say, who's your audience? And it's like, it's everyone, or it's marketing managers, or it's like, well, it's not everyone. It's, where's the niche in that specific audience set that actually are buying from you? So look at people that are buying and then kind of reverse engineer from there. And it's also worth understanding, especially in kind of B2B marketing. Sarah's right in the fact that B2B and B2C are actually more closely aligned than, trying to split them off. And right in the sense that you're spending someone else's budget. The big difference in B2B for me is that I am not the only person making a decision. So within a B2C world, the only person I really need to influence if I'm trying to market to them is the individual that's going to buy my product most of the time. Whereas in the B2B sense, you're talking to, generally speaking, you're talking to a committee or a buying group of people. And some interesting stats recently, I went to LinkedIn B2B event a few months ago, and they were stating on there that if 80% of the buying group don't know who you are up front, you're not going to get past that procurement stage or that initial selection stage. So it's fundamental, bringing it back into the conversation around branding that we're probably going to go into in a minute, not neglect, not the long-term benefits of brand building, because if you do brand building correctly, it can have short-term gains as well, but not to just jump straight to that endpoint and try to push that product to your audience instantly.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for the insights, everyone. And I think, just to recap that quickly, what I've heard so far is really going back to the basics, your fundamentals, making sure that you really know your audience and doing that retro, which is very important for us to make sure that our strategy is really not just very surface level. One thing that I want to know before we head out, because I'm seeing that the chat has fired up because it's now working. And thank you to everyone for introducing yourself, where you're coming from. We really love to get to know you as much as you're getting to know our panelists. You might be wondering, why is there no webinar deck here? Well, we've decided to try this new thing, which is we are going to run a webinar without a webinar deck. Mind blowing. Because we really wanted to make this more of a conversation between everyone and not just among the panelists, but also to you guys. So I will be throwing questions to our panelists, but feel free to also, share your insights into that chat box. And I think now our panelists have also access to the chat box. So if you guys have like a question for anyone within the chat, feel free to do that as well. I'm holding a pencil, but just so you know, I have like this massive notebook and I'm also writing my notes down. So I think that's also another good point. So get your notes ready because I think this is going to be an insightful conversation. So enough of me. As I mentioned, our panelists already got it started. It was very obvious towards the end of 2024, and I hope everyone agrees to me that there was this big push for brand building alongside performance marketing. My background is I'm a senior social media manager, and social media is one of those marketing channels that it's actually very hard to prove your ROI to the business. So for me, this is a win. But I wanted to ask our panel, do you feel like this trend of looking at and focusing a lot on brand building will continue this year? And if so, do we feel like there should be a balance between marketers should still keep a balance between the two, meaning between brand building and performance marketing? Because Rich, you mentioned this, I'm gonna start with you, and get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah. So certainly the conversation between branding and performance marketing seems to have been elevated. There's a lot of chat on communities and LinkedIn and places like that. For me, I don't think it's ever not been there. I think the issue that we faced, especially as a marketing department, is that pressure from sales and from different parts of the business to generate leads, marketing qualified leads. And what we've actually ended up becoming is essentially a sales enablement department. And that's why I was kind of talking about that fundamentals of getting back to the basics of what makes marketing marketing. It's a strategic department of the business. It shouldn't be just tactical. It shouldn't be just trying to fill a quota or a number of leads for sales to then call. And what we've almost kind of engineered for ourselves is essentially a cold pot. So sales are not getting qualified leads because we're desperate to hit a number that sales have put in place in order for them to hit revenue and pipeline. And that whole misalignment between marketing through to sales through to revenue is causing this friction. And actually what we're desperately trying to do, like I said, is hit a lead volume rather than trying to build a business and work together. And if you think about, this isn't new, but over the last 30 years, the companies that have succeeded and always stand out above everyone else are the companies that invest in brand and they invest in performance. And they do that simultaneously, and they do that really, really well. Companies that skip those steps and try to hit that sales quota, try to hit that number, try to hit MQLs. And let's bring it back. MQLs are not, we're on a webinar. They're not people that have agreed to come to a webinar and listen in for some information. That's not an MQL. You don't want to just pass that straight off to the sales team. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be qualified more. People that sign up to your newsletter, they're signing up because you've got something interesting to say and you're giving them value. They don't then need someone to pick up the phone and instantly try to sell to them. And I think, again, this is not new. Your marketplace, at any one point in time, only 5%, I think, is generally the consensus. Only 5% of your marketplace is in market to buy from you. So there's a huge pool, 95% of people that currently have no need or requirement to buy from you. But if you're providing that value and that need now, and you are generating that demand, when you want to capture it further down the line, they are already there. If you only focus on that 5%, you are consistently neglecting a wider audience that could become future customers.
I want to pass this on to Katie, but before I do that, Rich, because you are here, and I know for a fact that Rich does talk to a lot of C-level people. How do you get buy-in from sales or C-level to let marketing be more strategic than executive?
I think it's about influence. I think there's an influence problem. And I think that's why we've seen a rise in positions like the CRO becoming more important in the boardroom. And that's because I've had this before in businesses when I was in-house, and it's the marketing department get referred to as the coloring in team, and I think it's about educating the rest of the boardroom on the importance that marketing bring. And it's about aligning marketing metrics, because that's the other thing. A lot of our metrics tend to be, let's face it, fairly vanity. I'm sorry, Debbie, I know you're on social media, but things like follow account and
I
stuff
thought
like
you
that.
were looking at me, Rich. I was like, Rich, out to get me. Like,
And don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing anything that in terms of, from a channel perspective, but followers alone are not linked to revenue, as you say, in a standard attribution way. You can't say, hey, that follower is going to relate to this. So it's hard to prove the ROI. What marketing needs to do is align with the marketing metrics that matter, things like pipeline velocity, things like profit, revenue. How can you align yourself with them? It's not about that last click attribution model of saying, hey, paid drove that lead then converted, therefore we can attribute ROI back to that marketing spend. It's about looking holistically at what you're spending from a marketing perspective and aligning that to the business needs. And things like brand building and stuff like that, you can't measure it in the same way as you can performance marketing. So you have to measure it based on things, like I said, things like pipeline velocity, things like revenue, things like customer acquisition costs, and how you are, repeat business within the customer base that you've already got. So you have to align yourselves with those important business metrics rather than coming to the boardroom and saying, hey, this month I got 2 million impressions. It's like, okay, cool, great. What does that mean? Like align it to what actually matters to the boardroom. And that's how you'll get buy-in and influence with other C-level members.
okay, awesome. And yes, Katie, I did call you out a while ago because I know this is your forte. It's like all about integrated marketing. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off what Rich was just saying there, and this is probably the kind of the lead gen in me thinking this, but we're actually launching a new brand campaign to like tackle our top of funnel like issues essentially, and we actually have developed something which I don't know if it will be useful or if it's me thinking too much about lead gen, but we're calling it like a brand health index, where we're trying to like amalgamate some of these vanity metrics in order to actually track, because we think some of these things are not going to actually influence pipeline until like very much later on in the year, that kind of thing. So we're actually trying to look again to get buy-in from the board just to prove that the investment that they've given us for this brand campaign is hopefully worth it with this like month over month. But I haven't launched that yet, so I actually don't know how that's going to go. And it's interesting again because it's like as marketers we can become so obsessed with wanting to track things, and coming from more of like a demand gen and a field perspective, I kind of fall into that bucket and I'm like, oh gosh, I need to just realize that some things have different measurements. But yeah, that could be interesting. So more to follow on that one. But going back to your like initial question, Debbie, I think like yes, 100%. We will see brand become more important in 2025. I think a lot of people were talking about the reshift and focus back to brand like last year and in previous years. But I think what's really interesting and has stood out for me is like there is so much digital noise out there right now.
Yeah.
And that's obviously just been exacerbated by AI. And there's like so many, obviously had to talk about AI because it's marketing webinar, but there's so many different tools out there. There's like Gen AI tools, there's email automations. Like I'm sure every marketer on this call has probably got 20 to 100 sales invites in their inbox every day. And so I think that has kind of, whilst that is good, I think that we'll kind of see AI shifting more to help with things like the digital side of things, the targeting, better segmentation, marketing operations, that kind of thing, which actually leaves more opportunity to have that kind of intersection of AI and brand. And then like both Sarah and Rich were talking about earlier, thinking about being more like having more human to human marketing, having more a human centric approach versus like business to business. So yeah, I think there'll be a lot more focus on brand. I don't see that like the other side is going to fall. I just think that, yeah, more people are going to focus there. So I think a lot of what like I'll be thinking about is like, how do I build like emotional connections with my customers? How do I make sure that it's like human to human marketing, and how are my campaigns relatable beyond all of the stuff that is like very automated, AI, data driven, and that kind of thing.
Oh, awesome. And I do think like it's so hard to escape the topic of AI. I feel like every conversation and conference right now has AI. And the fact is, it is here to stay. And I think as marketers, it is a bit of I would say, I don't know what the word is, but we need to think about how do we incorporate AI to our benefit instead of just following the trend and everything else. I want to ask this question to Sarah. I know Sarah here, she works with a big umbrella company called the Adaptivist Group. Sarah, I would love to ask you, like when we say that businesses are ready to engage with a company, or businesses are ready to buy, how can B2B brands ensure that they are the first choice? Katie mentioned a lot about digital noise, and this is so true. There's just a lot of things happening right now. Everyone is jumping on every trend there is. How can you still stand out? And what concrete strategies can you share with everyone with regards to it?
So obviously I'm really biased because I'm a brand marketer, and so for me brand is everything. And I think it's really important that you, and Debbie, because we work together, that it's not about jumping on every trend. It's about you have to understand your DNA as a company. You have to understand your brand. You need to understand what is authentic to you, not just publicly, but all the way through, because when someone is ready to engage with you, and that lead is ready to talk to your sales team, if their interaction with your sales team does not meet their expectation because it doesn't match your public persona, there is a disconnect very quickly. So this is where your strategy, your full end-to-end, from like your brand building that might take 5+ years, it's a long-term strategy, right through to your sales funnel, and you're ultimately, you're in a room with somebody about to sign a contract. All of those points need to align. And this is where messaging and your, everything from, I say brand DNA, I really mean it's the color of your hair right through to how you sign your signature. It's the whole of the public and internal facing needs to align. And so that's where it gets really tricky, because you're bringing in so many different stakeholders from around the business to buy into the brand marketing and to buy into the brand messaging almost before you go public. So yeah, I just think the way you stand out is to be truly who you are, but you need to understand who you are. Because it's so easy to, I joke all the time, it's really easy to become really well known as a brand for all the wrong reasons. If your ultimate goal is to be known, don't have a real big mess up.
Yeah.
That is the quickest way to be known. Make a really big, very public error. But if what you want is to be known for all the right reasons, then it's a patience game, and it's a joined up strategy across your all of your marketing teams, your sales teams, your product or your services teams. The whole lot needs to align.
And I mean, I would love to do a follow-up question on that, Sarah, because as Sarah mentioned, we work together. Sarah is one of our clients, but I also work with other clients. And life example, everyone, I recently ran a social media workshop wherein one of the questions I just wanted to ask is very simple, like how would you like to be seen on your social media? Your social media is kind of like your shop window. Who are you on social? And some of my clients do not really know who they are. Like they are modern, but they appeal to very old, old demographic. I'm this, but I'm that. And it's like polar opposites. Like, Sarah, what is the first step you need to do in order to really answer who you are as a brand?
I think it's okay to be contradictory, because like brands need to be a living, breathing, evolving thing. They're a creature in their own right. And so and no one creature fits in a box perfectly. There's always an exception to the rule. And so it's understanding to what extent. So you can be a modern looking company set in heritage. Now, to what extent does your heritage dictate how contemporary or what trends you will be involved in? If you are future looking, how far into the future are you looking? Are we talking we're living on the moon, or are we talking, the next 5 years? So I think it's really understanding your own contradiction. So at the Adaptivist Group, we're a big family of brands, and we do everything from reselling Atlassian licenses to building products and apps. But the whole way through that, I mean, Brew is part of the family, so we've got this digital marketing arm. But for us, the unique thread amongst all the contradictions is the fundamental desire to make going to work feel better. And so it's understanding that, and I keep coming back to the word, the DNA of the company that will help you align those uncomfortable contradictions.
Okay, a good answer, Sarah, and definitely something worth for us to, have a stop and just think about that. Sometimes those are like the fundamentals that we just, glaze over and miss out. I think Georgina has a point here that I just want to note. Georgina asked, will there be notes or takeaways from this webinar? So we will be sending a follow-up email to all of our attendees with the recording of this webinar, and also some helpful, we've built a strategy. Georgina, you beat me to it. I was supposed to plug this towards the end of the webinar, but we have a resource hub that has a digital marketing strategy template, which will be able to help everyone here, and everyone, all marketers essentially, to start thinking about what is the right steps in order to build that digital marketing strategy that is right for your business. But over to you, Rich. We have dance over this, and we have kind of touch a little bit on it. When you start, thinking about your strategy, it is also very important to identify the right target businesses, the right target for you, for your company. It's very crucial. How do you approach this? Like, what are the best ways to reach them, the right targets, the right target market for you?
Are you saying that, so are you asking the question, how do you identify who your target market is, or you've identified them, how do you reach them, or both?
Well, both. It's a challenge question, Rich. How do you identify them and how do you reach them?
I guess that identifying who they are is something that you should be doing from the offset. When you establish a business, when you establish a product, you should have been creating that business to answer a need with that marketplace. So hopefully anyone that's launching a business has got an idea or a concept that is going to solve a problem that exists in the marketplace that they're going after. However, like we talked about earlier, you have that sphere of influence. So you have the person that you are trying to market to, and then you have that sphere of influence around them that they may have to bring into the conversation in terms of sign-off, approvals, that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a two-pronged attack, because you want to target the messaging to the people that are going to buy, and there's going to be specific targeting for that. You then want to target the rest of the buying group with softer messages. You don't need to necessarily sell to the the rest of the buying group directly, but you do need to be influencing them. So think about, first of all, segmenting that audience out. Like we said earlier, you're not marketing to everyone. Even if you are marketing to a wide group, different people will relate to different messages. The best example I can give of this, we work with a client, and they're running a specific campaign, and that campaign is targeting 3 very distinct audiences. One of those audiences are already aware of the company, and that's because they've either had a previous conversation with a salesperson or may well have active deals in the pipeline for other product services that company offers. They are going to be receptive to a very different message because they're already in the pipeline, or they already know about you. So one, you don't want to disrupt any sales messaging that's already going on with a hard sales message because they've already kind of bought into the business. You want to nurture that lead, you want to progress it. So you're going to talk to them very differently to, for example, a cold audience that don't know who you are. So if they don't know who you are, you're going to have to approach it from a full funnel perspective. Katie was talking about that earlier, about how you kind of fill that top of the funnel in order to nurture that audience down. And there's a variety of ways you can do that, and you should be thinking about how you can get that audience where their attention is. So it's not one channel, it's multiple channels. It's about messaging that's relevant to the channel that it's on. One message, say, on LinkedIn, doesn't need to be copied and pasted into a Google search campaign, doesn't need to be copied and pasted into a landing page or an organic social media post. Think about the channel, think about the source that you're on, think about the audience and how they're going to be receptive to that specific message at that point in time. If they're on LinkedIn, for example, and that is a channel for you, they may well be in business mode. But as we kind of discussed, B2C, B2B audiences, just because we work somewhere doesn't mean that when we finish at 5:30 that we're not still considering things for our job. Hopefully, unlike me, most of you guys will switch off and have a social life. I do tend to spend my life looking at stuff because that's who I am. But if I'm on TikTok, the messaging that I will be receptive to will be very different to them when I'm at work looking on LinkedIn. So consider the platform, consider the audience and where their attention is, and don't just copy and paste and repeat across multiple platforms and expect the same result.
Amazing. I do have questions that I want to just open up with everyone, but before I move on there, Katie or Sarah, is there anything that you would like to add to what Rich said?
I think it's just what Rich was saying as well. It's about staying top of mind. And so while we don't want to stalk people around the internet, it is just making sure that you are present wherever your customers are. So whether that is hanging out in forums or trade shows or, lunch and learn events, it's worth attending and being present. Whatever attendance means, whether that is hosting things like webinars, being a speaker, being in attendance, or whether it's a content strategy where it's more blogs and social that's infiltrating those. It's how you keep your brand alive in moments when people aren't thinking of their purchasing.
Katie, I saw that you were about to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, fighting for the mic. I think Rich gave the stat earlier that like the 95% of your potential buyers aren't ready to buy. I think another really interesting stat, and I think it's 70, it might be 75%. 70% of B2B buyers actually make a kind of do their own research without even engaging with your brand, without even speaking to a sales rep. So I think that's really interesting because it goes back to Sarah's point, like being where your audience is, because if you're not in those communities, if you're not in those forums and you're relying on people to come to your owned assets, sometimes that is like a big challenge and you're missing out a lot because like people have probably made up part of their decision before they've even got to you. So by the time, in the past, everything for like SaaS businesses was demo request, and that was a little bit lighter. Whereas now I think demo request is like you've ultimately like maybe made up your vendors of choice by the stage that you've got there. And so I think again, it comes back down to the importance of community and brand and being top of mind so that you actually are top of mind when they're ready to actually engage with your brand. Like if I think about how I buy technology as a consumer of like marketing technology, is I'll ask my peers first. I'll go into a Slack community that I'm part of, and that's where I'll start my research. Of course, if you're not in those communities, then you're not seeing that. And I guess there's a level of, like Sarah saying, you don't want to be too creepy and like get your sales team to jump on something after they've seen someone looking for a vendor in Slack, because that's obviously crossing the line. But something that I have at Iterable is a tool which allows us to see which stage our target accounts are in the buying stage. And so we've got that intent to kind of say, okay, now is the time to reach out. And that will be things like intent from third-party sites. So I might set up like a keyword phrase for like mobile marketing, and then we can work out from that what people are actually interested in. So we can kind of use those tools as intent to work out when is the time to like strike, to so we're not constantly bombarding people in like the target and awareness phase, when ultimately they're in that like 70% phase where they're just trying to do their own research.
Yeah. One thing that I want to share with everyone is that our intention here in the webinar is not to just give you the insights without backed up data, which is why I'm about to challenge our panel right now. We are sharing a lot of insights right now, but let's try to bring that into like real life examples. Is there a brand out there that is B2B? That's the challenge. A B2B brand out there that you feel is doing very well in brand building. And as you've mentioned, Katie, like knowing when it's right to strike. So, I mean, Katie, you just spoke, so I'm not going to go to you because that would be unfair. I can go. Sarah?
Oh, tough one. Maybe someone like Adobe. I always feel they have their balance just right of being a kind of cool kid where all the designers want to be using it. They're at a premium price point, so there's that gives an illusion maybe of expertise and quality that then buy into the, your decision makers and your C-suite level. And I feel like just to name Adobe, kind of, exactly emotionally what that means. So, like I said, cool kids, it's design, but there's so many more things. Obviously, they also now have their AI, and I feel like everything they've done from their content and their brand leaves you to have a positive sentiment around them, even if you don't fully understand what they do or what they offer. And I think that's ultimately what you want from a brand, is for people to feel great about something they have no idea about.
I mean, yeah, I think that's what our job as a marketer is. Like in one sentence, what do we do? Rich, do you have any brand in mind that you feel is, doing an effective marketing method or an effective strategy at the moment?
There's a couple. For those of you, I'm going to plug it. We have a podcast within Brew Digital called Marketers of the Universe, and we were recently speaking about brand on there. And I used the example of Monday.com as a very good business that have driven their brand to the forefront in the fact that they now own a day. But they are very aggressive with their marketing. They have absolutely no issues with the investment in. I think there was a stat, and you'll have to sense check this, but it was something like 80% of their budget or 80% of investment in some VC round that they got was spent on performance marketing and brand marketing in general. So they are a company that understand the value that marketing brings to a business. And I think, if you see them on search or anything like that, they are particularly aggressive with competitors. If you look for Asana, there will be a Monday ad and it will say Monday is better. Like, they are very aggressive in driving their own brand and competing on competitors' terms. Another good business that I really admire, and they've got a very strong CMO, is a company called Cognism. Cognism is a like a sales intelligence tool platform. It's a SaaS platform, but they have a CMO there, Alistair Corsi. If anyone doesn't know who she is, go and follow her on LinkedIn. She's very inspirational. You'll see her on the circuits at events and webinars a lot. She's a fantastic CMO, and she has been driving that business really, really well. And I think it's because they have that inspirational leader. And again, they value the what marketing can bring to the boardroom. That's when these companies have success. It's when companies, and I think there's a message in the chat. I was trying to follow it and listen at the same time. But Kev mentioned about how do we influence the kind of the C-level, and I think it's about what we touched on earlier. It's about getting them to value what marketers do. So stop going with reports that are kind of just not relevant. Like, hey, we got these amount of followers this month, or hey, we got these amount of impressions. They're not driving the growth of the business. They may well play a part in the bigger picture, but we're too stuck in trying to prove our worth with metrics that aren't aligned with business objectives. So let's take it back to, how are we aligning ourselves with the overall company objectives, that North Star? And let's face it, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be driving growth, driving revenue. Let's get back at the table and talking about how marketing is having an influence on the bottom line, not just being a budget or a cost center. And the companies that we've just kind of, Adobe, again, massive investment in marketing. And the tool sells itself, because the tool is so powerful. They then use the user generated content is massive for Adobe. They've got a bunch of creative people at their disposal that tell the world how great the tool is through the artwork and the creative that they are creating. So it's a really great model. But those businesses that we're highlighting are winning because they are aligned and they value what marketing bring.
Katie, any brand recommendation, brand drop?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have listed a few good ones. I'm going to take a slightly different approach and think about, if you are a big brand, it is probably easier to show up as these things. And yes, of course, there is a long trajectory to get there. So I guess I'll focus on a brand that springs to mind for me, which is I think a very small B2B MarTech platform called Influ2, INFLU, the number 2. So if you go on their website, I'd recommend it, because what they do is they will essentially retarget you with super personalized messages. So I got essentially, they were trying to prospect into me, and I got like very targeted messages with like pictures of the sales rep. So it's essentially like ABM, but contact-based ABM. So that message and that ad was specifically for me and not specifically from everyone within the company. And I just, like, as a marketer, I saw that and I was like, I don't think stuff like that is creepy, but I realize some people think that there's a border, like, is this creepy? Is this not? Am I being stalked? I just thought it was really interesting. And I think because they have a smaller brand, and when companies do have a smaller brand, they can't rely on that kind of brand reputation. And so you need to be really careful and personalized and make sure that your communications are really hitting on pain points and stuff like that, because you almost don't have that, like, you don't have the comfort blanket yet of your brand. So you need to make sure that everything you're doing is cringy, and I hate saying this, but like right message, right person, right time. And when you can nail that, it's a lot better, because you don't have to then rely on this big reputation or this big logo that everyone's going to recognize in like a millisecond.
Amazing points, everyone. And I cannot let this point go, because for our panelists, if you are following the chat, it became a bit heated because of the conversation that we are sharing, like really good marketing insights here. But then if there is no support from the top, then our marketing strategy will go nowhere. But Kev made a point, which is they don't even want to listen to you. So what's the point? Like, how do you make them listen? And I think taser gun was mentioned a while ago. Have not tried it, but maybe. I couldn't let this go, because this is from a real life experience. There's only 2 times in my life, not in my life, but there's a concrete experience wherein a CMO listened to my social media pitch proposal. It's because of 2 reasons. One, it's because a competitor is doing it and we can do it better. And the second one was because there was an opportunity in the market and no one has done it before. And I think both times, and I have repeated this over and over again to different C-levels when I want to try to make my point across or at least be heard, this is where I try to build my business case in. But that's also to say that it's also so important for you to really understand as well who you're selling to. At the same time as we try to understand our audience, you need to get to know the priorities of your senior leaders, because this CMO of mine, she is interested in growing the business, and I thought that this was a good reason. But I might have a different tactic if it's a senior leader that is like pretty complacent. We feel okay where we are. Maybe it's all about just like being more cost effective in the business. So I think that's just one point that I cannot let go, and I had to tell you, Kev. So hopefully that is good. Um Brew Digital left for B2B starting 10. Okay, never mind. I just saw Hayden's message on the chat. I thought it was funny. So conscious about the time. There is a lot of things that we want to come across with. As I mentioned to you guys, we have a digital marketing strategy template that we can come across. This is like one of the few times that we do have a deck for that, because we have a link. Tom, I think it would be helpful to bring it up right now. Hello, Tom. Tom, if you're there, answer. No, you're not. So Tom, just drop the resource link on the website chat. So we have the digital marketing strategy template ready for you there. And also, if you are not yet done with us, we also have a opportunity for people to, book a call with us to do an audit. I actually do the social media audit for our clients. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, feel free to also reach us out for that. So I think just wrap us up really nicely here. I would love to hear from everyone. If you could give one piece of advice to B2B marketers, whether it's something to do, to avoid, to start doing, to do less of, what would it be? I would start with Sarah first.
Don't jump on trends just because they're trending. Understand that why you're going to jump on it. And if you can't go quickly, if you can't be first, be second or third, or don't bother. So understand why you want to do the trend and act quickly, even if it's not super fast.
Awesome. And Rich?
Think about your campaign setup. Think about how you are trying to reach your audience. Have that focus on the 95% with demand generation tactics. Think about the product, think about the service solution. What problem do your audience have and what solution are you providing for them? Educate them at that stage. Thought leadership. What brand leaders do you have in your business that can help elevate your message and communicate out to their own networks with their own point of views and trends and insights? And use lead magnets like these webinars, but don't be afraid to ungate them. You don't need to put everything behind a form. You don't need to collect an email address or a number every time you do some sort of marketing activity and pass it straight to the sales team. Build demand, build basically at this point in time, you want to get that wider distribution of your message. You want to get it in front of as many people as possible. So don't use metrics such as lead volume at that stage of the funnel to measure your success. And then have that 5% capture funnel going. Have your conversion activity, have it well optimized, have your kind of consideration phase as well. And yeah, think about it from a full funnel perspective. How can you flood that top of the funnel so that you are filtering it down into the bottom of the funnel, converting that 5% that are in market as best as you can?
Okay. Katie?
Yeah, a loaded question, and I don't know what the golden ticket is, but if anyone finds it, then let me know. But no, I think it's like aligning on whatever your big bets are for the year, but ensuring that you're still making time for testing and experimenting. Like as Sarah said, you don't want to just jump on a hype because it's a hype, but you want to have almost like a portion to test and experiment things beyond those big bets. So I think that's important. Once you've worked out what is working, double down on it. I think the difficult thing with marketing is like 1 year something might be working really well and something might change the following year. Like we've seen that in very much like Google and like social advertising. Well, I have anyway. And then I think again, like going back to that kind of retro conversation, like making sure that you've got checkpoints throughout the year so you can identify what you need to start, what you need to stop, and then what you have to continue doing. Just so you don't get to the end of the year and then you do like a full retro at the end of the year and you're like, ah, crap, I should have really optimized that, you know, midway through the year. So those would be my tidbits of advice.
Awesome, awesome. Those are basically what we have for you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be sending a newsletter that has lots of the good things that we have from the, oh, there you go, Tom has it. So this is our digital marketing strategy template. You can find it on our resource tab. That's free. We're not going to ask for your email for it. So you can just download that off. And we will be sending a wrap-up email with this recording and other insights for you. We also have the audit, as I mentioned, that you can, you know, reach us to really like, you know, look at the discovery chats and see how we can support you directly. And we will also, because believe it or not, this is not our last webinar. We'd love to know what you think of this webinar and how we can improve. Should we have more decks? Maybe that's a good question for us to ask ourselves. And if you got really good insights from this, like we'd love to know. So we will be sending a follow-up to get your you know, thoughts of our webinar. To wrap this up, I think I want to also pinpoint like what Tom has mentioned as well as another thing for us to think about is to eradicate best practice. For heaven's sake, marketers are supposed to be curious people, and I cannot agree more. So thank you so much. This has been Debbie. The hour went by so quickly, which basically means I enjoyed that. I was nervous about this webinar the whole day, but I'm so glad that we worked on it. Sarah, Katie, and Rich, thank you so much for again taking the time to join us. And to everyone in the call, thank you. And if you'd like to connect with us on LinkedIn, please do so. We'd love to stay in chat. Thank you.
Thank you.